for Farragut on what you want to see this community become in the future. You talked about the town's history, its beauty and natural and built, the high-quality residential choices, the multiple activity centers or development centers throughout the town, having convenient living for people to get in and out and get to places very easily, outstanding recreational opportunities, and a community spirit that just makes us distinctive from other communities, not only in our area, but in the Tennessee area and the Southeast in general. So in order to get to that vision, we've got to break that down, and we worked on our 5-year goals. Or what are the things that we want to try to accomplish in the next 5 years? Broad-based goals, but things that you can really wrap your hands around. So we talked about maintaining our financially sound town and still providing our excellent services that we do today. We talked about strengthening our economy even more so. We talked about developing the town's historic assets and facilitating the future growth and development and redevelopment of different areas in town. And we also talked about expanding our leisure amenities that we already have. So with that, we worked on basically a policy and a management agenda. What are the priorities that we wanted to put in this year's budget? And I'm not going to go through all of these at this time, but basically these are all the things that we prioritized and started putting in the budget this year in order to make sure either they happen through monetary means or we work on them at the staff level in order to get things to the board for you to make decisions on over this next fiscal year. And we also talked about, on the next slide, the things that we're working on currently. I mean, there's several different things on here. We've already accomplished many of them, such as a new purchasing policy. We're working on a fee schedule to be approved at the next meeting. We have many projects that are underway currently throughout the town, and we'll continue to work on over this next year through our CIP process. So all of this is just saying that we worked very diligently. I know the Board of Mayor and Aldermen worked very diligently in prioritizing what you wanted to put in this year's budget, and that's what you have before you tonight. So if I can start with our revenues, I think our budget is in very good shape. We always start with revenues and try to see where we go from there. We always budget very conservatively when it comes to revenues. One of our largest and the largest revenue source that we have is obviously sales tax revenue, and we want to make sure that we don't go too far ahead in projecting those revenues. This year, we're projecting a 6% increase in revenues over last year. That's around a little over $7 million in revenues. And in fact, the sales tax revenue increase year to date is roughly 9% over last year at this time. So we're doing fairly well in our sales tax revenues to this point. As you can see on your screen, the breakdown of those revenues, obviously the local sales tax is the largest amount at 50%. The next largest amount is the state sales tax, which is based on our population, but is also based on sales tax revenues that the state receives. So in essence, 68% of our revenues come from either directly or indirectly sales taxes to the town of Farragut. Many of our other revenue sources are relatively consistent over the last couple of years. So really the biggest fluctuator is going to be that local sales tax revenue. One that has dropped over the last couple of years, which we anticipated, was the traffic enforcement revenue. Obviously, the board's aware of the new legislation that was just approved. We're still looking at that, but due to that, that revenue would probably diminish even more for next year. So you're going to have some give and take in different areas throughout this year's budget on revenues. From there, we go to expenditures, and here is where we talk about all the departments, what the departments need to operate and do their jobs and provide services to our community. Overall, the expenditures for the town have increased 7.6% from last year to this year, roughly $5.7 million. Obviously, our revenues of $7 million gives us about $1.3 million roughly in revenues over expenditures. Some of the largest, and one thing that you'll see at the bottom, if you can go back 1 second, one thing you'll see at the bottom is we have added in this year's budget a component for economic development. One thing the Economic Development Committee had made recommendations of is to separate out all the things we do for economic development in our town and try to budget for them in our own separate budget so we can see where those dollars are going, and we've initiated that in this year's budget. So that is new. It's just basically moving money around from other sources that we have already, and then some has been requested to be added for this year as well. One of the largest areas, though, that we have, as any municipality has, when it comes to your expenses, is personnel. And for us, we had a lot of personnel changes this year, a lot of things we studied and researched. The first thing that the board recently just looked at, in fact, was retirement, which the board decided at that time to get into the Social Security system. The town has not been in Social Security. And so with that change of getting into the system, it's going to be an additional $54,000 this year to the budget. The second thing that we also did was perform a classification and compensation study. And what that did was actually look at all the different job categories and classifications that we have and see where they stack up with the market. Where do all of our employees, position-wise, stack up in the market? And overall, we showed we were in pretty good shape, that our ranges were slightly under what some of the other municipalities around us and the ones we compare ourselves to were. And again, with the one thing that we will implement immediately would be a cost to minimum change, which is where any current employee in a position with their salary, if they were making less than what the new minimum would be brought up to that new minimum starting July 1st. So that's a total of $18,801 to the budget. One of the big expenses you see on your screen is health insurance. And obviously, health insurance is a big item for the national, for everybody in the nation, as well as it is for us. Our original numbers and the ones you have in your budget showed a 16.8% increase in health insurance for next year, and you see that number in front of you. Fortunately, I can tell you that we've received our final number from our health insurance carrier, and that increase is only going to be 5.93% now, which basically is going to save us around $70,000 in health insurance increase for next year. So when you see that on second reading, you'll see that incorporated into the budget. So that is quite a bit of a savings there. Merit increases, we're proposing a 4% merit increase this year for town employees. Again, with the implementation of the retirement program or getting into Social Security, we also were implementing a 4% dollar-for-dollar match. Right now, if we went ahead and did that and employees did that 4% match, it'd be around a 10% cut in their pay based on getting into Social Security and doing that match. What this is trying to do is accomplish not only obviously a merit increase based on their evaluations and how they perform, but also trying to get them to get into that retirement program fully and implement it fully right away. I think it's very important that employees do that for their good and for our good as well. And so that's a proposal that's in the package this year too. Finally, we talked about program changes, and program changes are anything that's going to change the way you operate business. Many times we talk about positions, and that's really what we're talking about this year. We're proposing to eliminate the Planner 1 position at this time. We have seen obviously a little bit of a slowdown with things. The position is very valuable. I think it can be very needed, and if we see an increase in things in the future, certainly I think we should put it back in the budget. But I think at this time we can go a year without that position, and so that's going to have a cost savings. But at the same time, I think we also need to add 2 maintenance worker positions in Public Works. This year we have added McPhee Park Phase 2. We've added right-of-way, a lot of right-of-way mowing along Campbell Station Road. We've added quite a bit of maintenance of landscape, different areas throughout the park. And we've added the 9.5 acres to maintain of the Dimmick property, which is now going to become part of our McPhee Park. So all of that is really taxing our department. In fact, the drainage complaints that we've been receiving from the last rainstorm we're still getting to, and it's just taking time to get to all those without even being able to get to the regular work that we normally perform. So with those 2 that total budget impact for the program changes would be approximately $48,705. Now, one thing I will tell you that was an inadvertent slip is that we included everything about those two positions in the budget you have except for their salary. So we included all the health benefits, all the other costs in the budget. So it's about $54,000 for those two positions that we will put back in the budget for second reading, and you'll see that at that time. And just going a little bit further on personnel, you see the screen before you. Personnel costs make up about 59% of our budget. And in a municipality, that's actually a pretty good number. A lot of municipalities that you see may have a 70% personnel ratio to operating cost, and the reason is that we're a service industry. People make up our industry in order to help the public and the community get things done. So that's why you see that number up there, which may be a little different than what you may see if you're in business. And then this chart just basically shows that 64% of our personnel costs salary, 36% benefits. That's a pretty good ratio between the two. And so I think we're in good shape there as well. And then just wanted to give you a 10-year history of our revenues and our expenditures. Obviously, the yellow line is the revenues and the blue line is our expenditures. And you can see there's been a very good gap in between, that we've had good revenues over our expenditures. The reason for that gap, and the reason we want to maintain that gap, is because we pay everything with cash when it comes to capital projects. We do not have any kind of bonds or debt at this time. So with that being said, we utilize that money to pay for our equipment replacement program and our capital investment program each and every year to maintain our roads and our parks and greenways. So it's very important that we maintain that. So getting into the capital investment program, this is our 5-year CIP. The only one that we really budget for in the current budget is FY 2012, but we plan for the next 5 years because we need to see what kind of projects. One project may start this year and then it may complete the next year. So we want to see what we have outstanding that we need to budget for. And you can see in this year's FY 2012 budget, we have some money allocated for a lot of different road projects. The Old Sage Watt Road extension. We're working on some final design and right-of-way acquisition there. We're also finalizing the Campbell Station Road to Parkside to Jamestown. TDOT always has some things that they will come back after the project's complete once they get their final numbers that you have to pay for. There's also a push to do the lighting along Campbell Station Road. This would be more decorative lighting. It's part of what the board discussed during your planning process and prioritization process back in February. There's also money to buy more right-of-way along Everett Road as that road develops and we get that built out all the way up to the subdivision that is, I think, Everett Hills. That in the future will need that right-of-way. Excuse me one second, Allison, we can go back. The one thing I want to talk about here is a couple other things. One is the outdoor classroom. I know we talked about that, and it was very contingent on getting grant money for that, and we just found out recently we did not receive any grant money for that in this year's budget. So we will be asking to push that out to at least FY13, if not farther, depending on how that grant money comes in. So that'll be a change in that project at your next, at your second reading. Also, you'll see $25,000 for the retro reflectivity signage. I know the board's very familiar with the new requirements for being able to visually see signs, and we're going to work on, over a 4-year period, getting those signs replaced within the town per the Federal Highway Administration's requirements. And the final thing we have is trying to re-landscape some of the landscaping, excuse me, along the Campbell Station, or excuse me, Grigsby Chapel Road landscaping islands. Next, we'll switch over to parks. You'll see we have money in the budget to do the master plan for McPhee Park phases 3 and 4. This is going to include the Dimick property that we just purchased and really phase out the rest of that land, so we'll know exactly what we need to buy and spend money on in the future for whether it's ball fields or open space or whatever the case may be. That's what that master planning process would be used for. There's also money in the budget for irrigating McPhee Park and all the areas that have not been irrigated along the front of the roadway, along the greenway trails, the slopes. So that's a pretty large project there. Also historical signs to go in Kimball Station Park, trying to hit on the town's history and its heritage, and we'll have those up all throughout the park. Also, Mayor Bob Leonard Park improvements. There's some lighting improvements there. And then we have had, over the last couple years, $100,000 per year going to greenway connections to make those greenways. We have found one that we